3 months ago, I stood in Portland's Union Station watching Claire Bennett hold a train ticket to Seattle in one hand and a Polaroid in the other. People moved around us. Announcements echoed through the station, but all I could focus on was the look she was trying very hard not to show. "I waited a long time for you, Ethan," she said quietly. The train doors were open. My throat felt dry. I had photographed wildfires, protests, and storms. Somehow, none of that prepared me for this. Claire looked down at the photo, then back at me. "You know what the worst part is?" I couldn't answer. A sad smile touched her face. "The whole time, you kept telling me some lucky guy would be lucky to love me." She swallowed. "Then why wasn't it you?" "The truth is, if you'd asked me a year earlier whether Claire Bennett and I would ever end up together, I would have laughed and changed the subject. Not because I didn't find her attractive. That would have been the easier problem. It was because Claire had become part of my life in a way that felt too important to risk. Every Friday evening for 7 years, we met at the same coffee shop near the Willamette River. The owner knew our orders before we sat down. Claire always got a lavender latte. I always got black coffee and pretended to enjoy it more than I actually did. And every Friday, we exchanged a Polaroid. It started as a joke after a community arts event where we first met. One photo from our week, no explanations required. 7 years later, the ritual was still alive. Some photos were random. A dog wearing a raincoat, a burned pancake, a crooked street sign. Others felt more meaningful, at least when I looked back now. That Friday, Claire handed me a picture of a park bench covered in yellow leaves. "Very artistic," I said. "Thank you. I suffered greatly for that masterpiece." "You walked outside for 3 minutes. It was raining. In Oregon," she pointed at me. "Exactly." That was Claire. She could make complaining sound charming. I handed her my Polaroid, a photo of a bookstore window downtown. She studied it for a second. "You know," she said, "one day you're going to accidentally take a photo with an actual person in it." "No promises." She smiled. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then her expression shifted. Subtle, but enough that I noticed. Claire stirred her coffee without drinking it. "I got a call this morning." Good call or bad call? Maybe life-changing call? That got my attention. She took a slow breath. A community arts organization in Seattle offered me a position. I stared at her. Seattle. 3 hours away didn't sound far until the person who might leave was sitting across from you. "Wow," I said finally. She nodded. "They want an answer soon." Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. For the first time in years, neither of us reached for our coffee. And neither of us seemed to know what came next. For the next 2 weeks, Seattle became the thing neither of us could stop thinking about. Claire tried to act normal. I tried to help. Neither strategy worked very well. One Tuesday evening, I sat across from her at her townhouse dining table while she worked on presentation materials for her final interview. Her dog, Murphy, was asleep under my chair, snoring loud enough to shake the floor. "You know," I said, looking at her laptop screen, "your slides are better than 90% of the presentations I've ever seen." 90%? I'm leaving room for error. She rolled her eyes. "You'd be terrible at motivational speaking." "That's one of my strongest qualities." A smile appeared, then disappeared. The closer Seattle got, the quieter she became. I noticed things. How she stared out windows longer than usual. How she stopped making jokes halfway through them. How she looked excited and sad at the same time. The final interview went well. Too well. 3 days later, She called and asked if I wanted to meet on the rooftop of her building. When I arrived, the city lights were beginning to glow beneath a cloudy Oregon sky. Claire was sitting on a folding chair with 2 takeout containers beside her. "Celebration dinner," she announced. "That sounds expensive." It was $17. Look at you, living recklessly. That earned a laugh. For a while we ate in comfortable silence. Then she asked the question, "Can I tell you something embarrassing?" Those are usually my favorite kinds. She looked down at her food. "My mom called today." Uh-oh. She asked if I'm ever going to settle down. I smiled. A classic parent move. Apparently 32 is now a national emergency. That made both of us laugh. Then her expression softened. "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I missed my chance." I stared at her. Because if there was one person I couldn't imagine being alone forever, it was Claire. Without thinking, I said it. "Any man would be lucky to love you." The words hung between us. Claire looked at me. Really looked at me. Not as a friend. Not this time. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, "Then why not you?" Suddenly, the city seemed very quiet. And for the first time in 7 years, I had absolutely no idea what to say. "I wish I could tell you," I answered Claire immediately. I didn't. I sat there on that rooftop, staring at her as if my brain had forgotten how conversations worked. Claire gave a small, nervous laugh. "Wow, that's probably the longest you've ever looked at me without making a joke." I finally found my voice. "Claire." But I didn't know how to finish the sentence, because the truth was messy. For years, I'd carefully avoided asking myself what would happen if I crossed the line between friendship and something more. Not because I didn't want it, because I wanted it too much. "I think," I said slowly, "I've spent a long time convincing myself that wasn't an option." Her eyes searched my face. "Why?" The question should have been simple. Instead, it felt like opening a door I'd kept locked for years. I looked out over the city lights. "A few years before we met, I proposed to someone." Claire's expression softened immediately. I had never told her the full story, so nuts. She said no. Claire stayed quiet. She told me I was dependable, kind, safe. I laughed once. There wasn't much humor in it. Then she said she didn't love me the way she was supposed to. For a moment, only the wind spoke. I guess part of me believed that after that. Believed what? That I was the guy people kept around, not the guy they chose. The words felt embarrassing the second they left my mouth. But Claire didn't look embarrassed for me. She looked sad. "No," she said quietly, "that's not what happened. It felt like it." "Ethan, one person hurting you doesn't make it true." I looked down at my hands, then at her. The distance between our chairs suddenly felt much smaller than before. Claire reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a Polaroid. "Remember this one?" It was from almost 2 years earlier. A blurry photo of Murphy sitting beside a pair of muddy boots. My boots. I smiled. That wasn't even a good picture. "I know." "Then why keep it?" Claire held my gaze. "Because you were in it." The answer landed harder than I expected. Neither of us spoke. The city lights glowed below us. The wind moved a loose strand of her hair across her cheek. For one dangerous second, I thought she might lean closer. For one dangerous second, I almost did too. Instead, Claire looked away first. And somehow that felt even more intimate. After the rooftop conversation, something changed between us. Not dramatically. Not in the movie version of events where two people suddenly kiss and everything becomes obvious. It was smaller than that. And somehow more dangerous. Claire started texting me things she normally would have kept to herself. Pictures of apartment listings in Seattle. Screenshots of ridiculous work emails. A photo of Murphy refusing to move from her suitcase. I answered every message. Sometimes immediately. Sometimes after staring at it for 10 minutes and trying not to sound like someone who was falling in love with his best friend. Then came Friday. Our Friday. The coffee shop felt different the moment I walked in. Claire was already there. No lavender latte. No smile. No Polaroid sitting on the table. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was the envelope beside her coffee. Seattle. My stomach dropped. You accepted it. She nodded. The silence stretched. I signed yesterday. I looked at the envelope. Then at her. Why didn't you tell me? A flicker of hurt crossed her face. I am telling you, you know what I mean. Claire leaned back. For a moment she looked tired. Not angry. Just tired. Ethan, what exactly are you asking me? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I wasn't sure. Was I asking why she was leaving? Or why she hadn't waited? Or why she'd looked at me that night like I was finally seeing something she'd been carrying for years? Claire looked down at her untouched coffee. Then she said the thing I hadn't been prepared for. I don't want this to happen because I'm leaving. I frowned. What? She met my eyes. If you suddenly decide you have feelings for me because you're afraid of losing me. Her voice softened. No, then that's not what I want. The words hit harder than they should have. Because part of me couldn't honestly say she was wrong. Claire folded her hands together. I spent 6 years with someone who always needed more time, more certainty, more proof. I knew she was talking about her ex. The last thing I want is to become the person someone chooses only when they're about to disappear. My chest tightened. Claire, no. She shook her head gently. For once, I need to choose myself. Then she stood, picked up her bag, and walked toward the door. The little bell above the coffee shop entrance rang once. I sat there staring at the empty chair across from me. For the first time since she asked, "Then why not you?" I realized I might already be too late. I didn't call Claire that night. Or the next day. Not because I didn't want to. Because for the first time, I understood what she was asking for. If I went after her now, it couldn't be because she was leaving. It couldn't be because I was lonely. And it definitely couldn't be because I suddenly realized she was important. She'd been important for 7 years. The problem was that I'd spent 7 years hiding behind that fact. 2 days later, her friends organized a small farewell gathering at a neighborhood brewery. The kind of place with string lights, food trucks, and people pretending they weren't emotional. Claire arrived late. Everyone cheered. She rolled her eyes. Please don't make this weird. Too late, someone shouted. The evening passed in pieces. Stories. Laughter. Bad jokes. A few awkward comments about Seattle. I stayed near the back most of the night. Not because I was avoiding Claire, because I was trying to be sure, really sure. Near the end of the evening, Claire stepped outside onto the patio for some air. I followed a minute later. She looked surprised when she saw me. Ethan. Hey. The silence wasn't comfortable this time. But it was honest. I held out a small cardboard box. Claire frowned. What's that? Open it. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of Polaroids, every single one she'd ever given me. Her expression changed immediately. Ethan. I kept all of them. She looked through the stack. The park bench. Murphy. Rain-soaked sidewalks. Coffee cups. Sunsets. Tiny pieces of 7 years. I know what you said at the cafe. My voice shook slightly. More than I wanted it to. And you're right. Claire looked up. I don't want to choose you because you're leaving. I took a breath. I want to choose you because every time something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. Another breath. Because I know when you're stressed by the way you stir your coffee. A small smile appeared despite herself. Because I know when you're pretending you're fine. I laughed nervously. And because apparently I've been carrying around a box full of evidence for years. Claire looked down at the photos again. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she asked quietly, "What happens now?" I swallowed. The answer felt terrifying. You go to Seattle. Her eyes widened. I do. Yeah. I nodded. I'm not asking you to stay. For the first time all evening, something in her expression softened. Not relief. Not certainty. Something closer to hope. 3 months later, I found myself standing in Portland's Union Station. Exactly where this story began. The train to Seattle was boarding in 15 minutes. Around me, travelers hurried across the station carrying backpacks, coffee cups, and places to be. I checked my phone for the 10th time. No new messages. No missed calls. No sudden signs from the universe. Just me. Waiting. Over the previous 3 months, Claire and I had talked almost every day. Video calls. Weekend visits. Late-night conversations that somehow lasted until 1 in the morning. For the first time in years, neither of us was hiding. But we still hadn't answered the biggest question. Could this actually work? A train announcement echoed through the station. Then I saw her. Claire walked through the crowd with a duffel bag over one shoulder and Murphy's leash in her hand. The moment she spotted me, she smiled. And just like that, the station felt smaller. Hey, she said. Hey. A familiar nervousness settled between us. Not bad, just real. Claire reached into her coat pocket. You know, I brought something. I laughed. Please tell me it's not another Seattle apartment brochure. No. She pulled out a Polaroid. Of course she did. I looked at the photo. It showed our usual table at the coffee shop. 2 mugs. One empty chair across from the other. Written across the bottom in black marker was a single word. Reserved. I stared at it for several seconds. Hoors. Then looked up. Claire's eyes were shining. I took that last week. Yeah. She nodded. I kept thinking about something. What? Her smile trembled slightly. For years, I thought I was waiting for you to choose me. I felt my chest tighten. But that's not really what happened. She stepped closer. I needed to choose you too. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I laughed softly. Mostly because if I didn't, I might not have been able to speak. So what are you saying? Claire rolled her eyes. 7 years later, she still did that whenever I made things harder than necessary. I'm saying, she said, there's a remote work option. I blinked. There is, and I think I'd like to keep my Friday coffee appointment. I smiled. The kind that starts somewhere deep and refuses to leave. Outside, rain tapped gently against the station windows. Inside, Claire slipped the Polaroid into my hand. For 7 years, we'd been saving pictures. Turns out, we were saving a place for each other. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that love isn't just about how deeply you feel, it's about having the courage to be honest before it's too late. Sometimes we hide behind friendship, timing, or fear because we're afraid of losing something precious. But the truth is, staying silent can cost us even more. The people who matter most rarely need perfection. They need honesty. And sometimes, being chosen starts with choosing to be vulnerable first. Have you ever cared about someone for a long time, but struggled to tell them how you really felt? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to read it. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and join our community for more emotional stories about love, life, and second chances.